for us to come talk.
And then we're down the back stretch with waiting for other attendees to log in. So maybe, what do you think, Libby? Should we get it started here in about 30 seconds?
Let's go ahead and get started. And anybody who comes, we'll welcome them as well.
Perfect.
Because again, we want to be cognizant of everyone's time, and we do again appreciate you guys for being here.
Perfect. Let's do it. So welcome everybody to our 403B Retirement Plans for Nonprofits webinar today, brought to you by Human Interest in partnership with WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network, powered by Payment Advisor. And today, our speaker will be Mark Fowler, Director of Retirement Education at Human Interest, and I will do my best to moderate. I am Aaron Wilson, Business Development Manager for the Accountant Channel at Human Interest as well. So just some housekeeping notes for today. Please ask questions in the Q&A box. This webinar will be recorded and shared afterwards. And if you have any additional questions or would like to learn more about Human Interest, feel free to use my email at aaron.wilson@humaninterest.com. So first and foremost, Mark, what is the 403B?
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, and great question. And 403B, and you'll see a lot of other numbers and letters coming through this. What those mean are they are just referring to the particular section of the Internal Revenue Code that defines the particular plan. So in this case, the 403B is that section of the Internal Revenue Code that relates to retirement savings for tax-exempt organizations. For those of you who have maybe experienced or have a little knowledge of a 401k, a 403b is the tax-exempt organization version of the 401k. So if you were trying to do the translation, it's the equivalent over here in the not-for-profit sector. Just like a 401k, it has the ability to have employee deferrals into it, which can be made typically on the 403b side on a pre-tax basis. So it'd be taken straight from your paycheck before the government comes in and says, "Oh, let me have a little bit of that in a tax slice." Okay. What we call Roth options are available, and that is after tax. And that can be something that the plan either enables or doesn't enable, and can be a great feature depending on the setup for the particular organization. And the great thing about both 401ks and 403bs is all the money that you place in there for your retirement account, for your retirement when it happens, can grow undisturbed by taxes. So that's what we call tax deferred. So for the entire time that it's in there, Uncle Sam's not coming in and taking little bites at it. It just grows and grows and grows. And then when you need it, whatever year that is, then some of the taxes might be assessed, depending on whether you did pre-tax or after tax. Okay. And just like a 401k, there are limits on what you can defer or what you can contribute each year. But they are pretty large, and we will touch on those a little bit later in a second. But you might see, oh, up there, you said certain tax-exempt organizations. Well, which ones are you really referring to? Well, great question. Let's dig in a little further and really clear up who are we talking to. So again, you see this combination of numbers, letters, and brackets that refers to a specific part of the code. And really, broadly speaking, any entity that's created under the 501c3. So that includes public schools, cooperative hospital service organizations, uniformed services university of the health services, public school systems organized by Native American tribal governments, certain ministers, and and any 501c3 institution which might include a not-for-profit university, religious organization, or social service agency. Whew, that's a lot to get through. So if you sit in any of those organizations, then a 403b is available as an option for you. So you're there thinking, okay, you said there's an equivalency of 403b and 401k. How do we tell the difference? Well, you're in luck, because at your next dinner party after this meeting, you are going to be able to amaze your friends by identifying 403bs versus 401ks. Are you ready for this? Here we go. So we'll start in this center column of what do they both share? What are the similarities across them? First is these are what we call company-sponsored retirement plans. So these plans are essentially based from the organization. They are the ones paying for it, making it happen. So it's what we call company-sponsored. Both have annual contribution limits. And these get set every year by the Department of Labor and the IRS. And right now, for 2023, the annual contribution limit for both of these is a $22,500. And there are some specifics on top of that as well, depending if you're over 50 years old, etc. Yes, it is driven primarily by the employee contributing into the accounts, but the employer can also shoulder some of that and make contributions into the accounts should the organization think that it's appropriate, right? Both of these can be can be impacted by state retirement legislation, which we're going to touch on in just a little while here. Both have to file what's known as a Form 5500. We won't get too deep into that, other than saying a Form 5500 is the equivalent of a W-2 for your retirement plan. So it's the form that you file with the IRS that says, hey, this is the state of our retirement plan. So it just gives them all the relevant information. And then early withdrawals are allowed, but there are some sort of penalties and tax implications around that. So if you suddenly needed to take some money out of your 403b, it would have some tax implications, and there might be a penalty associated as well, right? That's if you do it before your retirement age, okay? And then essentially, this would be open for all of your company employees. There might be some different restrictions depending on how it's set up, particularly on the 401k side. You can put in some language into the plan design that says, hey, you got to be with the company for a little while, or you've got to have done X amount of service with the company for you to be eligible for the plan. 403bs, it's a little more open in terms of, hey, it's right there straight away as you join the company. And both of them do have the ability to be what we call traditional, i.e. pre-tax, or Roth, which is sort of after-tax contributions. Okay. Then if we jump across to the 403b and say, hey, what's different for the 403bs? It's only available for tax-exempt companies. Right, IBM, they're never doing a 403b, right? The great thing with 403bs is because they work with tax-exempt organizations, they are essentially exempt from most of what the IRS calls non-discrimination testing. And oh, by the way, I see a hand up. If you have a question, please feel free to ask it in the Q&A. So I do see that there is a hand up. If you could ask your question in the Q&A box that you probably see at the bottom of your screen, we'll be able to work with, see if we can get you an answer. All right. 401ks, they have a lot of different investment types that can be a part of the plan. Over on 403b, it's only mutual funds or annuities. And if you want to learn more about that, you can either tap Aaron on the shoulder and he'll talk to you about all kinds of funds and the different differences, or it is a really interesting Google if you want to build up your own knowledge around that. 403B plans might be exempt from what we call ERISA, right? Which is the laws governing retirement savings. Okay. What we will say here is Human Interest as a company, we don't work with non-ERISA plans, right? And we can talk about why that is, but ERISA is essentially the way of making sure that these plans function in the way the government intends. And then employee, there is this one extra little benefit that 403Bs get, which is if you've got someone at your organization that has been there for 15 years or longer, they can actually contribute a little bit more into the plan underneath this 15 years of service loophole. Okay, so that said, if we zoom in and look at some of the key differences a little bit closer, what do we see? Well, first of all, the investment options, and we touched on this already. The 401k plan can include all kinds of mutual funds, annuities, portfolios, etc. The 403b plans are limited to custodial accounts and annuity contracts. Right, as it says there, churches can have a little bit more flexibility in this. Eligibility, we can see on the 401k side, we can get a little bit more specific about the path people have to take to being eligible for the plan, right? And that's because the 401k side, it's really looking at how do we help the company retain some of the employees. So they say, hey, you've got to be here a little bit longer. You've got to be a certain amount of hours of service. You've got all of these things can be put into a 401k. On the 403b side, it's essentially all employees are almost immediately eligible. But you can exclude people in certain situations, people who work less than 20 hours a week, professors on sabbatical, certain students. And I know for a fact, when you use the phrase certain students, if it was me, it would apply to me, right? I don't know what certain means, but I know that my teachers always said, yeah, I'm that certain student. Union employees and non-residents with no U.S. income. So you can move the grouping around there a little bit, but essentially on 403Bs, if you're in, you're in. That said, on the other side of things, we have 401k plans have to be governed by ERISA. On the 403b plan, you can sidestep ERISA, but at Human Interest, we encourage working through that. And that's, in fact, the only kinds of 403b plans we will work with. On the testing side, the 403b, you essentially, again, skip the majority of what's known as non-discrimination testing. And that's really about making sure that the benefits of the plan are distributed evenly across the organization. All right. So in 401k plans, there's all kinds of other tests that you have to pass in order to not be penalized. 403b, you're essentially sort of given a pass through most of those. We got the 15-year service catch-up, which we talked about earlier, and then plan hardship withdrawals. And what we see here, which is pretty interesting, is that the hardship withdrawals are now allowed in both sets of plans. And in fact, coming in 2024, technically on the very last day of 2023, but in 2024, the hardship withdrawals, which essentially means in certain circumstances, like you're late on the rent and you need some money to cover the rent, or late on your mortgage, or you're trying to pay for your immediate family's education, or there's medical bills that insurance doesn't cover. those sorts of things which fall underneath the hardship bracket, you can now use more of your 403b money as it is available for a hardship distribution. And so what we see there is there is some new legislation coming in 2024 that says, hey, if your company has contributed into your retirement plan, that is now available for hardship distribution as well. So that's a lot to cover. And obviously we can go into all kinds of nerdy detail on any one of these points if you really want to, but typically that's enough to get you through your very next dinner party or a strong conversation with your CPA. Right?
Well, that's good.
Yeah. What do you think, Aaron?
I like that. Just to kind of like hit up a couple of the questions in the Q&A. I belong to a nonprofit HOA, homeowners association. Anytime that you're looking for who would be able to participate in a 403b, it's going to be any employees on the payroll. So just any employees on the payroll for your nonprofit, whether you're an HOA or any type of nonprofit company. We also had a great question. What does ERISA stand for? It is not the name of my dog, I promise you, but it's a very lengthy law called the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. Federal law basically sets standards out there on how 401ks can run to be fair and impartial to all employees involved. So a lot of protection is around there. And that's how both 403b and 401ks are designed, governed by the laws of ERISA. Perfect. The great questions, keep them coming. I'm keeping an eye on that for you. So Mark, quick question. What if the nonprofit already has a 403b? What should they do there in that situation?
Great point. And the answer to this comes up for a couple of reasons, right? So first of all, if you are running a retirement plan, you have a sort of like ethical obligation to make sure you are doing the very best with the money that you have some sort of oversight over, right? Plus, you also want to spend some time going through and thinking, what do I know about my plan versus other plans in the market? And that comparison technique is what we call benchmarking, right? So essentially you go through, what do we have now? Where are the fees? What are the costs? How is it being handled? And then you go out into the market and you look at other options to compare against that. And then think, okay, am I doing the best thing for those people who are trusting me with the oversight of their retirement accounts? And so Human Interest, we believe so strongly in what we do that we actually offer a benchmarking service. Aaron, can you remember how much it costs for us to benchmark?
$0. We will do this compliment. What?
$0? You can't be serious.
I am dead serious. Like it is our pleasure to do a benchmark. We're here to help all the small businesses, whether you're for profit or nonprofit, and looking to see what you're paying currently. A lot of the costs are unknown to the participants and to the business at hand. We'll take an x-ray using certain documents like a fee disclosure and any invoices you might be getting billed by the provider, and then compare it to what we could offer you to identify if there are opportunities for savings. We have historically have done thousands of benchmarks here for our partners, clients, and so forth, and we average around 25% in cost savings as well, leveraging our technology to make it easier and more affordable for you to have this for important benefit. So yeah, really good stuff. That's a great benefit, great service that we offer.
Yeah, and at the very least, even if you do this benchmark and decide not to go with Human Interest, what you've done there is really educate yourself around how your plan is running, and you are exercising that sort of ethical responsibility of making sure that your plan is the one you really should and want to be on, right? Because remember, you are holding your team's retirement future in your hands, right? And so this is an easy step to really being educated and informed about what are we doing with our team's money. And that's huge. So
Very
um
okay. So perfect. So another question for you, and it's very similar to the one that was in the Q&A. If I was a nonprofit business, why should I offer a 403b benefit to my employees?
yeah, and the answer to this is both huge and small at the same time. So on the huge side, across the country, we are beginning to stare into the abyss of a retirement crisis. And what we mean by that is, if nothing changes in how we approach retirement generally, there is projected to be a gap between what Americans need and what Americans have in retirement savings of $137 trillion. I can't even picture what that looks like, right? Other than to say to you, if you went out there and totaled up all the assets that BlackRock and JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, everything those asset managers have, and put them all into one pot around the world, it wouldn't equal somewhere around 2/3 of that gap. That is the size of what we're facing. And if we don't take care of that, there is going to be a generation of people hitting retirement without the ability to look after themselves, right? And then you sort of add on to that fact, well, if there is a gap, where does that gap fall, right? Is it up there at the, Fortune 500 companies? No. They've got teams, they've got benefits packages. It's somewhere else that gap is falling. And so what we see is right now that 40% of Americans at best are confident that their retirement is on track. So you flip that number around, and suddenly you've got 60% of people are there going, I'm not where I need to be. Specifically, of that, overall, 1 in 4 Americans are going to hit retirement with 0 in savings. That's not like, oh yeah, I don't have enough. That is 0. And so one of 2 choices then present themselves to those people. Either I got to keep on working, or I am just going to have to eke out an existence on Social Security. And that is not going to be a lot of money. And so, if you're trying to figure out, well, what is on track, the sort of back of the napkin thing, and don't do this last at night because this will keep you awake for the rest of the evening, right, is to take your sort of planned expenses in retirement, and then whatever that number is, for each $1,000 of that per month, you should have around $120,000 in retirement savings. So if you were planning out $8,000 a month in retirement, you would need $960,000 in your retirement savings, just as a sort of rough guide, back of the napkin kind of thing. And the number here, the median amount individuals near retirement ages can expect to have each month, less than $1,000, right? That is not enough, particularly when you project the cost of healthcare in retirement. And so, first of all, there is this big thing of what is the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is give people the opportunity to approach retirement with dignity. So that's the big thing. On the small side, on the individual organization, what we see is getting talent into your company is the ongoing battle. And when you've got good talent, you want to keep them. Obviously, one of the key things there is salary. So we want to make sure people are paid appropriately. But beyond that, what additional benefits really stack up? So health insurance in the US is obviously key. People are looking for that. It's very hard to take care of yourself if you don't have that kind of backup on it. So But the very next, and you can see how close it is there on the chart of retirement plan. That is the second benefit that everybody asks for. So with that, if you want to attract the right talent and attract the right folks into your organization, then making sure you offer not just a retirement plan, but a retirement plan that really does speak to the talent market, then making sure you have a 403b or a 401k is almost table stakes at this point. I do see a question coming in about the 137 trillion gap. That actually comes from a report from the World Economic Forum. So you can pull that up, and we can provide that as a resource afterwards if you would like. All right. So right there's it's the right thing to do. It's also good for the attraction and talent retention within the company. But then there's also the element of you might have to do this. And that's where we talk about state retirement mandates. So, each state has started to realize that if we don't lean in here, if we don't start doing something, we're going to have a generation of people who can't afford really to live in our state, and we're going to have to support them somehow. So the states are going, let's see if we can change the narrative on this. And they've said, well, what we're going to do is start requiring people to have plans in place. Now, when we're doing that, we will offer a state-run program for free, but they have to choose whether they want that or a more powerful, qualified retirement plan in its place. Okay? And so what we've seen is across the country, we are now up to 46 states who have started the process of putting a retirement mandate in place, of which 16 have actively passed legislation, and 8 already have what's known as active programs, and the majority of which are being backed up by pretty severe penalties for non-compliance. So if you're there wondering, like, where is my state? Well, one thing to bear in mind as we go into this is it's not just about where your organization is headquartered. It's about where your employees pay their taxes. Okay, so this is a kind of handy dandy chart, and we'll move from left to right. So on the left side, they've started the conversation. It's on the radar, but there's nothing really in place yet, but the machinery is just beginning to turn. When we get to the middle there with legislation passed, so these states have all gone, yep, we are going to do something, and we have active people creating the plan right now, but we haven't rolled it out just yet, but it's coming. And then on the far right, the active mandates. These are the big ones. So if you have employees in these states, you want to be very, very clear about, do you meet mandate requirements? Right? For instance, if you had anyone, say, working remotely in California, and you had more than 5 people in the state of California paying their taxes, you would be falling under the California state mandate. Okay. So in terms of checking in on things, active mandates, get in there, check them right now. If you need to, you can talk with Aaron and myself, and we can help guide you. Legislation passed, you probably want to keep your eye on that sort of once a quarter if you've got people in those states. And then the legislation introduced, you could probably like put that out, just keep an eye on it every 6 months or something, right? But if you're on the right-hand column, you want to know right now, okay? And so what is the state mandate specifically? So typically what will happen is the state will say, we have put together this plan. Typically it's what's known as a Roth IRA plan. And essentially they say you need to either enroll in ours or have a qualified plan already in place at your organization, right? And so when we talk about a Roth IRA plan, for those who aren't familiar, they are essentially after-tax contributions and have a much lower contribution limit than a 403b or a 401k. So typically, well, it's $6,500 for anyone under 50. Over 50, that moves up to $7,500 total. For the 403b or 401k, that jumps up to $22,500. And if you're over 50, you're looking at $30,000. And then there's an additional if you've been there longer than 15 years. Okay. So, and that's just in what you can put in as an employee. Your organization can also contribute on top of that up to a grand total of around $66,000 a year. So if you really do need to work hard on sort of creating that, obviously a 403b is your way forward. Many of those states, particularly the 8 on the right-hand side there, have introduced deadlines and compliance. So they're saying, hey, if you've got this number of employees by this date, you need to have your qualified plan in place. All right. And if you don't, then we'll talk about fees and penalties. I know the state of Illinois is sending letters out right now where it's $250 assessed fee for everyone who's in non-compliance in 1 year. And then if you stay in non-compliance, they add an additional $500 per employee. And so that racks up very, very quickly. And then on top of that, you're going, well, it's a free plan. Maybe I'll just jump in and I'll just use that free plan. Well, understand that your operations staff may have something to say about that, because for most state-run programs, it is on the employer organization to handle the administrative burden. And let's zoom in as to what that might look like. So anytime somebody, so you got your tasks on the left there, somebody changes, I'd like to actually up my contribution limit from 5% contribution percentage from 5 to 6. The company has to inform the plan that that's happening. Anytime somebody says, you know what, this plan isn't for me, I want out, company has to take care of that. Every payroll period, you have to file all the contributions and file listings, etc., with the plan. You also have to manage and debit appropriately the company's bank accounts. And then obviously anytime somebody joins your company, becomes eligible, or actually steps out of the organization, you have to make sure that all of that is reflected accurately with the state plan. And that is a surprising amount of work. We had a call yesterday talking with somebody who had gone through this and literally was spending a significant part of their week just trying to catch up with the payroll information that had to be submitted to the state plan. And he said getting out of that freed up so much time in his day that he could actually start now supporting the business. And he freed that up by working with Human Interest and having what we call an integration. So there you've got the retirement platform plugging directly into the payroll. And so all of this stuff that we just talked about kind of happens automagically. All right. That's a word I just made up. Automagically. I love that word. All right. And so we can dig into what that really looks like. But essentially, what we do at Human Interest is our job is to use the technology that we have to streamline all the hassle out of this process and also reduce the cost of offering a full-featured plan, because those were traditionally the two barriers that stop people signing up for 401ks or 403bs. Like it's too much work or it's too expensive. Neither of those things are actually true anymore. if you find the right provider. And Aaron, I think we know a good provider for this sort of thing.
Yeah, starts with an H. Human interest.
It's on the top of my tongue.
Yeah.
And we won't get into too much of the specifics other than to say the technology we have essentially just communicates directly with your payroll system. And right now we're integrating with, what is it, over 400 different payroll providers.
Yeah, it's over 400. And if you're interested in learning more about one locally, Payment Advisor is a great option to take a look at. And you'll see the email there right down on the slide as well. So
yeah. And when the great thing about our integration with Payment Advisor is the fact that, you know, within that, all you do is make sure your employees are in the system. After that, your 403B or 401k plan can communicate with that payroll automatically, and everything just happens. So someone comes in and says, I want to up my contribution rate, not a problem. Nobody has to do anything. It's communicated directly into our system. Our system communicates directly with the bank accounts, and everything is reflected accurately, meaning there's no human error really in the system. So everything runs a lot more smoothly. But on top of that, Aaron, we're not done, are we?
We aren't. But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. I love that.
Yeah, and since we have a partnership with Miss Libby at WITV7, we are able to pass some savings over to you. Thank in part to our partnership together. For starters, have a conversation with us. If you want to see what the true price would be for having this benefit for your company, we're willing to waive the setup fee, $500. We're also going to do something called a tech credit. This is a partner promotion that's very special and unique to Human Interest through our partnership with WITV7. So imagine this. If you can see the different numbers there for the tech rebate. So 10 employee company, regardless of participation, you sign up because you came from Libby and WITV7, you're going to be able to get a $1,000 check sent in the mail after you launch the plan. So we're trying to help give kind of like a donation to your firm to help you have this benefit out there. So don't hesitate to reach out, schedule a discovery call with one of our account executives to answer any of the questions that you may have. No obligations to take the steps forward, but it's always good to be informed, especially if you have state mandates impacting you. So, yeah, there we go.
With that, I think we've talked a lot. I would love to hear questions from everybody here. So if you have any questions, please, again, we've tried to do as much as we can throughout the session of answering any questions that came up. Thank you, Aaron, for fielding most of those. So please use the Q&A box. Let us know any questions that you might have. And whilst people are typing those in, any further conversations that you'd love to have, who would they reach out to, Aaron?
Perfect. Feel free to email myself at Aaron, AARON.Wilson, like the volleyball, @humaninterest.com. And if you're looking for more operations services, including payroll or online giving programs, reach out to Jude DiClemente at his email. You'll see right there as well. And that is in conjunction with the partnership with WITV7. But thank you, everyone, for attending the Human Interest webinar about 403B retirement plans today. Feel free to email us for a copy of the webinar, and schedule time to learn more about how we can help.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone for joining us for this. Libby, it's been an absolute pleasure to ramble on about our chosen specialist subject of 401ks and 403bs. Aaron and I can never get enough about talking about this stuff. So if there's any questions anyone has sort of basically in perpetuity about any of these stuff, please reach out to us. We would be delighted. And we can get as geeky or as nerdy as you would like us to do on any of this stuff in support of getting people to retire with dignity. That is really what we're about. And we kind of get up in the morning focusing on that. So if you give us an opportunity, we will help you out.
Perfect. Thank you, Libby.
Thanks, guys, for coming, and we do appreciate it. Again, anyone in the group or from the nonprofit organization, again, we're here to educate, empower, and encourage you. And we're here to help you grow your nonprofit.
Well said. Awesome. All
Thank
right.
you very much. So I saw the note in the Q&A. I was just appreciating the thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.